You know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
Well,
you ought to try
CR that I'm doing it right now, brother.
Smug MAGA propagandist Scott Jennings went on Kaitlan Collins' show to debate about the ongoing government shutdown that the Republicans could end at any time. But the pundits like Scott Jennings and the politicians like MAGA Mike Johnson keep acting like the Democrats are to blame. We're going to take a look at clips from CNN with this debate with Scott Jennings up against Karen Finney on Kaitlan Collins' show. I want to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's check it out together.
White House is arguing today.
Well, the president did try to bring them into the room the other day, and they wouldn't budge. I mean, look, the facts here are pretty simple. The Republican Party has put on the floor and voted for a clean, continuing resolution, no changes. These are Biden budget numbers, by the way, and numbers that Democrats have voted for 13 times. Nothing up our sleeves here, Kaitlan. They're trying to keep the government open long enough to negotiate things like the health care issue, which you were just debating, which I actually think maybe Republicans will wind up dealing on that. But they're not going to do it under duress, and they're not going to do it under threat of rolling back all the Medicaid reforms that were done this summer. So I think President Trump tried to bring the Democrats in. And at the end of the day, I think the American people know here they're looking at two parties. One's trying to do a bunch of funny business. One's trying to keep the doors open. And right now, I don't think the funny business side is winning in the eyes of the American people.
Karen, what's your view on that?
Well, I just want to correct something. You know, Scott, you know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
Well,
you ought to try
CR that I'm doing it right now, brother. So the CR is that the Republicans have proposed is actually not clean. It's pretty dirty because it includes the $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that the American people themselves have made clear they do not like. So it is not the same. I think it would be a very different moment and conversation if literally we were talking about what was passed in 2024. That is not the actual fact of the case. The fact of the case is that the measure is something that, again, the American people themselves have said they do not like. The other piece of this is, I think Democrats have a clear, concise message in terms of health care. Think about this. Republicans are on the side of saying we have to protect these tax cuts for billionaires. That's going to impact the wealthiest 1%. Democrats are saying we want to protect health care for over 20 million American families. And I agree with what, I was glad Senator Smith pointed out. I also just got my email today about my health care and choosing a plan. So people are already seeing that their costs are going to go up starting in January 2026. So I think Democrats feel pretty strong about this because the politics have changed. And, the last thing I would just say on this, my first government shutdown, Scott, I know you've been through a few of them too, was in the Clinton administration, and the kind of backslapping, oh, we're just joking that we heard from the vice president today. Well, we heard that from Newt Gingrich, and he was, bracing for the fight, and we all know how that worked out. I don't think the American people like seeing the president make light of their health care or their jobs.
Scott, you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're stunned. I'll just be honest with you. We're stunned. The Democratic constituencies are principally immigration populations and government workers. And right now,
I'm a Democrat, and I'm not an immigrant, and I'm not a government worker.
You're putting one on top of
yourself.
You're putting one on top of the other.
My mother is a Democrat. She's not an immigrant. She's not a government worker.
This is what your party relies on, and you've closed shop on government in Washington, D.C., and eventually they're going to get tired of it. There is no reason this government cannot be left
Americans
open.
Who voted for.
It's hilarious to me that this smug prick, Scott Jennings, bristles at being told to be honest when this guy is one of the most disingenuous people on TV. He goes on shows like this with Kaitlan Collins on CNN. He goes on Abby Phillips' show all the time. And all this guy does is spin. It's constant misinformation, disinformation, and he is just a smug, disingenuous propagandist prick. It's funny that he's talking about all the president wanted everybody to get together when Trump is actively telling the Republicans not to negotiate with Democrats. Scott Jennings knows this is not true. So it's so performative the way he acts all indignant over being told to be honest when he is incredibly dishonest. Scott Jennings is one of the most dishonest pundits on television with his smirk and his smug attitude. I can't stand this guy.
For Kamala Harris, we're all immigrants?
No,
that's not true.
I'm saying I'm listening to Democratic arguments about most policy issues, and I'm looking at Democratic energy, and it mostly has to do with things to do with immigrants, illegal and some legal, and things to do with government bureaucrats. And right now, you're putting one of your constituencies out of business.
Can I say one thing, which is that people who are in the country...
In the Trump administration and MAGA people like Scott Jennings are trying to put the other constituency out of business. Federal workers. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with being a federal worker.
Legally cannot get these subsidies
Sure
that we're
they can.
talking about.
Sure they can.
No, they can't.
No,
Sure
they
they
can't.
can.
It's
When they-
federal law,
who
Scott,
do you think? Who do you think pays when they go to the emergency room? It's the Medicaid
Scott,
emergency
going
program.
to the emergency room is not getting an Obamacare subsidy. The
You
emergency
guys are
room is not
conflating.
healthcare,
You guys are
Scott.
conflating
No, we're
these
not,
issues.
Scott.
You're conflating these
and
issues.
you're being dishonest with
The
the American
subsidies are a
people about
separate
this,
issue. The
because you know
Medicaid
it's
program cuts
unpopular.
are a different thing.
Right, but I'm talking about
Medicaid and the
subsidies.
Obamacare stuff are two different issues. And I said
Correct.
the subsidies may get negotiated over time, but what Democrats want to do is roll back what the Republican Medicaid reforms were. They want, look, I don't understand why everybody's so mad. For time immemorial, Democrats have argued that it's good. It's good for illegal immigrants to get Medicaid. Every candidate for president in 2020 raised their hand for it. In the big, beautiful bill debate, they argued it was good policy. I can't believe there's an about
but
face in the
Scott,
Democratic Party on it today.
Hold on. I got a question for Karen, but Scott, I will say,
Sure.
people who are in the country illegally also can't get Medicaid.
Sure
That's
they can.
federal law.
Sure they can.
They can't get Medicaid.
They also
Medicare,
can't register
CHIP,
to vote. They also
Obamacare
can't register to
subsidies.
vote, but we just found one in Maryland who was running the Des Moines
one.
school system.
Oh my God, one.
I mean,
Scott.
I'm telling you, you guys say these things can't happen,
I'm
and
just
then they
saying,
happen.
Scott. But I'm
Oh
just
my
saying
God,
it's federal
you're
law.
absurd.
And
You
they're
can
not
run
trying to
cover.
roll
You
back-
can run cover
they're not
for
trying
it if
to
you
roll
want,
back
but they
federal law.
do
I'm not-
get federal
it's
tax
just the
money.
facts.
They get
But Karen,
federal
can I ask
tax
you-
money. Ask Jake.
Yeah.
He had it on today.
I'm just saying it's against federal law to
Okay.
do
Yes,
that.
it is.
Good luck
Karen,
with it.
can I ask you, because one thing that we've heard from Democrats over the last several months is that the president's consolidation of power is dangerous. That's how Democrats have framed
Yes.
this. But now what House Speaker Mike Johnson, the point he was making here last night, is that Democrats have handed the president more power by shutting the government down, because now they're canceling and stopping these contracts and saying they're going to fire a bunch of federal workers during this period. Was that a mistake in your view?
Well, but again, the president, it's a choice that the president can make. I mean, governing is all about choices, right? The leader of the country can say, hey, I'm going to protect tax cuts for billionaires, or I'm going to make sure over 20 million American families can get the subsidies they need to afford their health care and not see it double. And by the way, Russell Vought is not someone who, this government is, we know they're going to doge their way through the rest of the federal government anyway. I don't think there's much credibility in saying, hey, we're going to use this to lay people off. I mean, I just want to consider, it's a different pot of money, but think about the optics. The White House confirmed to Fox News today that the construction of the Grand Ballroom will continue while they are talking about laying people off and potentially firing people. That is outrageous. If you're serious about negotiating, as the senator said, you don't do things like that. You say, we are going to bring everybody to the table. Let's see what we can get done. And Scott, part of the reason this issue around the ACA credits, as the senator I think pointed out, there's not a lot of credibility here. So let's act like adults. Let's come to the table and stop making threats about, we're going to fire these people and we're going to, you know what, you're the leader. It's your job to bring people together.
Scott Jennings is the perfect MAGA spokesperson. He just sums up MAGA personally. He's smug. He's always smirking. If you notice during the video, he's raising his eyebrows. I always wonder if he has a friend or somebody else who he's like, hey, guess what? Tonight, I'm going to do this. I'm going to raise my eyebrows 3 times and that'll be a message to you. I mean, he's always on here, he's looking directly at the camera, but Scott Jennings does it all the time on Abby Phillips' show where his head is turned, but he always turns and looks right directly in the camera so he can mug and smirk and do all of his douchey little faces for the camera. MAGA keeps telling this lie over and over again, and Scott Jennings brings it up here about that illegals are getting Medicaid. That's not true. They know it's not true. They've jumped on this because they feel like it's good messaging for them. It is a Reagan-era policy, so St. Ronnie signed on to this, that if somebody who's undocumented is in the emergency room, then the hospital, and that person doesn't have money to pay because they can't get Medicaid, the hospital is reimbursed by Medicaid so that the hospital gets paid. That's what this is. Scott Jennings and the rest of MAGA are lying when they say that these undocumented people get Medicaid, just as they're lying in the cases of undocumented people voting. Scott Jennings brings up one case here, and Karen Finney rightfully says, okay, Scott, one case. Another myth that MAGA loves is voter fraud. This would be an example of voter fraud. And there have been all kinds of studies where they looked at billions and billions of ballots and found not even 1%, a fraction of 1%, where there could be something that could potentially be fraud. Usually it's somebody doesn't realize that they voted in two places and it's a mistake. But the genuine cases of fraud typically tend to be Republicans. And anytime Republicans and MAGA do these investigations, they always drop them because it doesn't look good for them. But again, Scott Jennings is a propagandist. He would have fit in very well, him and Caroline Levitt and some of these others, in 1940s Germany, spinning, doing misinformation, disinformation on shows on CNN and other places like this CNN show with Kaitlan Collins. Let me know what you think about all this. Do you agree with what Karen Finney had to say? Do you agree with the smug propaganda from Scott Jennings? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.